Alright guys, first thing I'm going to do, you can see how it's cracked around here, down here, up along here, here, there's a crack runs up here. Now in the door there's an extra plate that the hinge area mounts to. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this section out to there, across here, because this is where the metal sort of flattens out. There, down to here. So I'm going to cut that out with my grinder, and then we're going to get a look at what we can do for the metal around it, and hopefully we can add a little bracing to it maybe. I like to make it a little stronger than it was. Alright, so there we have our steel plate. Now this is good heavy thick metal. I think that's part of the problem, is these spot welds here create a weak spot between the thinner metal and the thicker metal when everything's flexing back and forth, back and forth. What you could do is you can add more spot welds, but since this is all cracked up, we got to remove it. And then we're going to make a new plate for here out of at least 18 gauge. This feels like it's, I would say it's 18. I might even have some 14. I'd like to go a little bit thicker. And then, so yeah, let me get this cleaned up and we'll take it from there. So there we have it. I ground off the last two spot welds and separated the plate from the metal. And then you can kind of lay it in place and get an idea of what you got going on here. So the reference point for these two holes, obviously that's your door hinge, and you need those. Now that is affixed onto this door, so that's kind of a bonus for us. A lot of earlier ones it was a sliding bracket. And so what would happen is this whole piece would be inside in its own encased shell that it could move up and down for adjustment. But this relies on the holes in the door hinge for the adjustment, so we're okay there. So now we got to go get a piece of metal larger than the hole here, and we're going to try and weld it onto the inside. Then we're going to get a piece of metal that is the same thickness as this, weld it to the outside, and when we weld that first piece brace inside, we're going to weld this to it and use this as our reference to find the right spot for our holes. We're going to drill a bunch of extra spot weld holes in the middle plate, and then we'll put the outer plate on. Hopefully don't warp it too much, then we'll grind it down and finish it up. And that's going to be the bulk of the repair right there. Alright guys, so here's our larger patch. Now it goes about as far over here as I can because of the curve of the metal. And right about there is where this curve of the metal, so once I fit it, it'll extend down a little bit and over and under and up. And that's how it's supposed to go. What that's going to do is just give us an extra layer of metal, make things a little bit thicker and a little bit stronger. These doors aren't light. I mean, we're not talking 1969 Dodge Monaco doors or big old Cadillac two-door doors, but these are heavy and they get a lot of hard use. So we're going to get this brace sized up and fit, and we'll come on back. Alright guys, so all said and done, I made my other two pieces. I haven't fit them yet, but I also ground off the edge of the paint here. It's going to burn off anyway, and I want a good clean weld. And I've uncovered a total of 3 cracks. One along there, ends right about here. One here that curves right to the edge of the curve and stops. And this little guy here. Him, I'm not worried about. By the time I weld and grind everything down and touch it up, he'll be fine. But this guy can keep on continuing to crack. So I got to drill out the end of him, and same with this guy over here. I got to drill out the end of him. So I'm going to drill those guys out, and then I'm going to fit my inner panel. And once it's fit, I can mark and drill the big holes for the two bolts for the hinge, and then we can get to fitting everything together and weld it all up. Alright, so I did find another crack just over here, right? Well, I gotta find it again, but I did find another crack. Anyway, I got the edge of my panel rolled. It's rolled in for this compound curve, and then it flattens out really nice. And I'm gonna get to drilling out those cracks, and then we can tack weld this guy in, and we can mark our holes. Actually, we're not going to tack weld them in. I'm going to mark the opening, then I'll put it onto the original plate that we're going to cover it with, the new plate we're going to cover it with, and I'll superimpose the original plate on top of that, so I can transfer all my marks over, and then we can put the backing plate on this guy. We need the backing plate on him before we put the outer plate on. Follow? I hope so, because I'm not sure if I do. Here goes. Alright guys, so here's our inner brace. This is our main mount. Like, it's absolutely thick, but what we want to do is just spread the load a little bit, add an extra thickness of metal to give it a little bit more oomph. So that being said, what I'm going to do is seam weld it. I'll weld in this little hole here. That'll give it one little brace. Because you got to think, this is going to sandwich together nice and tight when it's all said and done. I'll put a couple tacks off to the side here, because it's not going to get in, well, actually I'm going to weld it right along on the side here because it's not going to get in the way of our external repair. And this boy's going to be strong. This is going to be added and welded up onto this. So we're going to have a triple layer of welded material instead of just a single layer, and I'm quite happy about that. I don't see any issue with this being a good strong repair. So let's go. Alright, now I just got to fit this guy underneath, hold him in place somehow, tack weld him in the corners, and I can finish welding in a few places. Try and get it welded all the way around, then refit my last panel to go over the top of it and finish the job off. Alright guys, so now it's tacked in place, and you're probably thinking, well, that's never going to hold, it's not going to whatever, but you got to remember, everything squeezes together. Now I got to clean up the edge of these welds, and then refit this outer panel, and when I'm done I can weld the outer panel to the inner panel and to the original door skin of the truck. I'm going to put a couple of welds here, here, and here, just for spot welds to this panel to adhere both panels together. And I'm pretty happy with how this is turning out. Might not be how you guys would want to do it, but it's definitely how I want to do this one at this point in time, and I'm really happy with how it's going. So I'll clean this stuff up and get ready to weld her in. Alright guys, there we have it. We got some rosette welds to do. We've got to trim back down to where it's going to actually fit inside. And there we have it, pretty well fitting, as good as any factory setup would be. And since the holes inside don't move, we just need them to be fully uncovered, and we're really centered well. So I'm going to buzz that guy in. So now I'm going to hit that area with a little bit of wash and wipe. And it's a little bit too warm to hit with some rust inhibitive primer, but we'll let that cool down for a minute or two and then I'll splash some primer on it. So guys, if you're wondering what kind of primer I'm using, it's just simply this rattle can. It's called Rust Destroyer. It's got a rust converting agent in it, and you can apply it over rusty metal, which, I don't know. There are good rust converters on the market, but this stuff here, I like to use it right before paint because it'll set up good, it dries pretty decently, and you can sand it pretty decent. Like, it doesn't gum up sandpaper like some other primers you get out of the can. And yeah, seems to work pretty good for me, but this is as far as I'm taking the job. So is it perfect? By no means, but it sure is a heck of a lot stronger than the old cracked metal that was there. I don't believe I used too much heat, because you can use too much heat and then your weld will stay, but the metal will crack right beside it. But this should be a pretty good repair. I'm really happy with how it turned out. So I guess that's it for now. That's that episode of Days of Glory Shop Works all wrapped up. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Please like, subscribe, and share. And well, we'll see you on the next video, guys. Thanks very much.